I tend to think that great literature, by definition, has the potential to lead us to God. Because it's truthful. Because God is true and real. And great literature wants to open us to reality. It has to have an element of transcendence. It doesn't have to be allegorical. It doesn't have to be a work of fantasy. But it has to provoke reflection. What are the causes of these events? What is the meaning of these events? What is the design that might be discovered? It has to immerse us in the story, but then take us beyond the story into realms of reflection, of questioning, of wonder provoked by the story. If a story encourages us to pay careful, respectful attention to the world around us, that's going to tend to cultivate a sense of reverence. But I think we need more than that. And so I'll mention a couple of ingredients that I think are essential for a story to lead us to God. And the first is a willingness to look at the darkness. We live in a world where, the creation is groaning, sin is real, death is real, we hurt one another, we hurt the creation. All of these things are true, and any story that tries to say, if we know God, everything is great, is not paying respectful attention to reality, I would argue. So there has to be a kind of honesty about the difficulties that we face within ourselves and around us. But then the second ingredient of a story that will lead us to God, or that might lead us to God, is that there's also light. This kind of story will still find something in the human spirit, something in the resilience of creation, something in the mystery of our place in this world that can be affirmed and even celebrated. The beautiful thing is that you can trust that kind of hopeful insight when it comes against the backdrop of a willingness to be honest and truthful about all that is discouraging, all that isn't hopeful. Now, the proportions may be very different. So in a comedy, for example, a comedy is perfectly able to lead us to God. It may take a brief glance at the darkness and the problems and then focus on how resolution is achieved. A tragedy might reverse those proportions and be very kind of devoted to the dark side of things, but nevertheless, even in a tragedy, there will be elements of light and truths that can be affirmed that will emerge out of that darkness. In most works of fiction, we have a hero or a heroine, a protagonist who's at the center of the story. And this person, the center of consciousness of the story, is usually trying to exert control over his or her life. I'll give an example from Charles Dickens. It's one of my favorite opening lines in all of literature. And Dickens opens his semi-autobiographical novel, David Copperfield, with this line: "Whether I shall turn out to be the hero of my own life, or whether that station will be held by anybody else, these pages must show." And that's the challenge he sets himself in this work is, will the narrator, will he turn out to be the hero of his own life? Will he star in his own story? And you read that opening and you think, I'm cheering for him, right? I want him to be the hero of his own life. Don't let anybody else take that spot away from him. But, of course, as we proceed through this long novel, what we find is that David Copperfield is not able to exert total control over other people and his surroundings. And in fact, any story in which a character did exert control wouldn't have a plot. It's not even a plot by Aristotle's definition. It's not interesting. What we find instead is that David Copperfield, or any other hero or heroine, is fixed in a web of reality that includes countless other people, countless events, countless mysterious forces that he doesn't understand. And his story is shaped by all of this, and not just by his own will. He's a character, he's a creature, he's made by another. And that's the insight that I think we come to again and again when we read great literature, is that, in fact, there are forces at work in reality that are larger than the individual will. And we realize that it's not me scripting my story, I'm being scripted by another story, I'm used by another for a story that is more beautiful than any story that I could imagine. I think great literature takes us again and again to this posture of humility and of wonder and of reverence and that sense of surrendering control of the story. Shakespeare's Hamlet arrives at this insight, right, in Act 5. He has a revenge plot in mind, but he ends up saying, I'm just going to drop that because there's a special providence in the fall of a sparrow. People who love stories and who spend a lot of time reading spend a lot of time immersed in language. So this is, in some ways, the most obvious and banal, and yet I think there's something profound in this insight, is that when we spend time with words, we're exposed to the wonder of what words can do. You know, words that are artfully arranged can give us new perceptions, can expand our minds. You know, I don't have to leave my living room in order to travel to another world. Really well-used words will open up other worlds. There's not just escapism here, but there's a sense that a voice is coming to me from afar, and this voice understands something about me and about my world. It also calls me on to new knowledge and new experiences. That is a really miraculous thing that a word can accomplish. Now, the ultimate miracle here is not that we can communicate with one another through language, but that God communicates with us. And Christ is famously the Word made flesh. Christ comes to us as the Logos, as the absolutely true Word. So that words can be true, and that words can lead us to truth. You know, I mean, that's a fundamental Christian insight. And I won't say that just spending a lot of time reading will give you that insight, but spending a lot of time reading, especially reading good things, will, I think, give you a respect for what language can do. And I do think that the most powerful stories say something to us. You are understood. You are not alone. But come look at this. Come move outside of yourself into the experience of another person, into another plot, into another story. You know, a reader of great works will say, oh, there's so much I can hear, there's so much I can learn if I expose myself to the literary tradition. I'm going to listen. I'm going to listen carefully. And if we have a posture of humility and a posture of listening, I think that's exactly the kind of disposition of mind and heart and soul that God will speak into. And so I do believe that immersing ourselves in the literary tradition and in great stories can lead us to God.